If you look just beneath the surface of all the chaotic daily headlines, you start to see a single, coherent story playing out. It's a story about our world being put through this massive stress test, and it's revealing some serious cracks in the systems we rely on every single day. So let's follow that story together and see where it takes us.
I mean, it's a heavy question, right? But it's one a lot of us are asking, because in so many different areas, the answer kind of feels like, yeah. From the information we're supposed to trust, to the tech we use, even to the food on our tables, it feels like the very foundations are shifting under our feet.
For starters, our shared sense of reality, of what's even true anymore, is fracturing. You've got these incredibly sophisticated AI-driven disinformation campaigns, like the one Russian intelligence just unleashed in Moldova. They're designed specifically to destroy trust in democracy itself. It's become a global information arms race, and the battlefield, it's our social media feeds.
At the very same time, the big digital dream is slamming up against a very hard wall, the physical world. The AI revolution we hear so much about needs a truly staggering amount of power and infrastructure, and it's straining our energy grids and our supply chains right to their breaking point.
And this strain, it's showing up in the most fundamental way you can imagine. For the first time ever on record, famine has been formally declared in places like the Gaza Strip, and parts of Sudan are literally starving. And in these places, conflict and climate shocks aren't just creating hunger, they're actually being used as weapons.
So this is what we're calling the Great Fracturing, because these aren't just a bunch of random, isolated problems. They are deeply interconnected symptoms of a global system that is cracking under immense pressure, and it's happening everywhere all at once.
But here's where the story gets really interesting. For every single one of these fractures, a powerful, almost instinctive adaptation begins. So as Russia is flooding Moldova with AI-generated propaganda, a democratic counteroffensive is quietly mobilizing to fight right back. You can almost think of it like the world's immune system kicking in. First, watchdog groups expose the networks, sounding the alarm. Then you have the Moldovan government launching a dedicated center to fight it head-on. And finally, the big tech platforms, feeling the pressure, they step in and act, taking down over 1,000 channels. Now let's go back to that fracture in the tech world. The cost to build the infrastructure for our AI-powered future is, well, it's just staggering. By the end of this decade, the projection is that we're going to spend $3 to $4 trillion. That's a scale of investment that's almost impossible to even wrap your head around. And that massive cost is really just a hint at a much bigger problem, a physical collision course. The amount of power that AI demands is on track to just surge right past what our current grids can actually supply. I mean, these data centers are starting to consume electricity on the scale of small cities, and we are simply not prepared for it.
This economic strain isn't just happening in the tech sector either. When an absolute icon of luxury like Bergdorf Goodman has to sell off a massive piece of itself just to pay down its debt, that's a powerful signal. The world of high finance and luxury goods is also showing these deep fractures after years and years of easy money.
So you see the pattern here, right? For every fracture, there's a reaction. And this brings us to what we're calling the scramble to adapt. Because these are not long-term, well-thought-out strategies. Nope. These are reactive, sometimes even desperate moves just to keep the whole system from breaking down entirely. Just take a look at the world of finance. For decades, the rule was super simple. If inflation is high, you raise interest rates. Period. But the US Federal Reserve, they just did the complete opposite. They're bending their own rules, which is basically them admitting that the economy is just too fragile, and they're prioritizing avoiding a crash over fighting inflation. And the tech industry is adapting with this absolutely incredible building boom. We are talking about hundreds of billions in new spending, brand new government alliances, and even bitter rivals suddenly partnering up. All of it happening in a desperate scramble to build out our AI future. Okay, but here's the twist in our story. All of these adaptations, fighting disinformation, building more data centers, pivoting on monetary policy, they're all just treating the symptoms. They don't actually address the underlying disease. And that brings us to the really uncomfortable part, the truths we'd all probably rather ignore.
So the first hard truth, the good times we saw in luxury and finance over the last decade, they weren't exactly magic. They were fueled by a totally unsustainable binge of easy money and cheap debt. It created this mirage of endless growth that, well, is now quickly evaporating. The second suppressed truth is that Silicon Valley's whole disembodied hype has a massive, very real physical footprint. AI's magic doesn't just come from the cloud. It comes from mines and power plants and land. We just can't ignore the staggering environmental and resource cost of our digital world anymore.
And this, of course, leads to the core social fracture. Public trust just dissolves when people feel like the game is rigged. And when the bailouts and the market gains seem to go to a select few while everyone else feels the pain, the very idea of a social contract starts to completely break down. This quote just hits the nail on the head. It reveals a fundamental blind spot in how we even try to solve problems. We create these siloed solutions. So we might push for a green energy project that saves on carbon, but in the process, we accidentally destroy a local ecosystem or a community's way of life. Our fixes just end up moving the fracture somewhere else. So, where does that leave us? If our systems are fractured and our adaptations are really just short-term fixes, how in the world do we move forward? It's pretty clear we need more than just fixes. We need a compass for the future. And this compass points in 4 main directions. First, we have to defend the very idea of a shared reality. Second, we have to build solutions that don't just create a whole new set of problems. Third, we need to rewrite our social contract so that it's actually fairer for everyone. And finally, we have to start using the incredible solutions that we already have. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought. From climate tech to fairer economic models, the solutions to these fractures, they largely exist already. So the question is no longer a technical one. It's a question of collective will. We can all see the cracks forming in the system. The real test is what we choose to build in their place.